Hi, my name is Replogle, and today I want to talk to you about the history of wrestling. Have you ever done anything that dates back 15,000 years? Unless you're extremely old or have participated in wrestling, then you probably have not done such. As you might have guessed, wrestling is a sport that dates back 15,000 years to cave drawings in France. Being the oldest sport known to man and extremely difficult, it is an original Olympic sport and was perfected by the Greeks and later the Romans. In my speech, I will talk and inform you on this ancient sport and give you its diverse background and facts about its origin. Firstly, Egyptians and Babylonians are depicted using many of the holds and moves commonly used today, but the main credit for the development of the sport goes to the Greeks. The Greeks could be called the fathers of wrestling because they commonly practiced the sport and developed it very much. It was a crucial part of Greek society, and it was a rite of passage and of manhood for Greek boys and was taught in schools as physical education. The Greeks adamantly and rigorously practiced the sport, and it was not uncommon to see people wrestling in competitions around the country. Wrestling was as part of Greek culture as the writings of Homer, and it was even mentioned in the stories and in all of Greek literature. Everyone did it and was expected to learn it. And although it can be used today as a deadly art due to the sheer strength it requires, it is a very graceful sport that requires stamina, technique, and intelligence. In my experience, I've seen many big, strong guys get beat by weaker, smaller people because they just were smarter wrestlers and wrestled intelligently. And it's a smart wrestler is a champion. Wrestling had a slight change when Romans conquered Greece, and the Greeks, seeing that the Romans could not handle the brutal way the Greeks wrestled, changed the sport, and along with the Romans bringing their own form of wrestling, led to a new style of wrestling called Greco-Roman, which is what's practiced today in Olympics and is a style based purely on throws. But now for more modern advances. Wrestling finally made its way west and suddenly became popular in the U.S. as well. It had circulated through Europe in festivals and circuses and stuff like that, and it was only as a spectator sport. It wasn't until the formation of the International Federation of Associated Wrestling Styles, or FILA, that the sport began to take standardized and formulate rules. Wrestling began to become mainstream throughout the states in the 1900s and found its way onto school campuses. High school wrestling and collegiate programs began to pop up everywhere, and it's extremely competitive and very difficult to get into college wrestling today. Now that you know the general background of wrestling, I want to speak to you about the history of Olympic wrestling. Wrestling was first featured in the 1904 Olympics in St. Louis in the form of freestyle. In early Olympic Games, wrestling was referred to as the marquee event. In 1904 Olympics, wrestling was a faster-paced, disciplined game that permitted the use of the legs to attack and to defend above and below the waist. After an 11-hour match in the 1912 Olympic Games, it forced officials to put a time limit on the matches. Other rules of Olympic wrestling include no headgear, bandages, metal shoes, or any type of sweat or lotion on the body. The mats had to be certified before the match, and there are 3 judges during the match. Points are determined at the end to see who the winner is. Nowadays, here in the U.S., there's we use folk style, which is what is practiced, and 2 points are awarded for a takedown, which a successful takedown is someone who's completely brought down off all fours to the mat, and 1 point for a successful escape, which you break the grip of the other opposition. And up to 3 points can be awarded for near fall, which the back is exposed to the mat, but not the shoulder blades aren't fully pinned to the mat for a 5 count. But matches are 3 periods consisting of 2 minutes each, and you can win by a pin, but you can also win by a tech, which is you have 15 more points than the other person. But in conclusion, you now know the history and background of wrestling. And although it can be very difficult to understand and even more difficult to do, in the end it's an easy sport to understand. You have more points, you win, and ultimately that's the goal, to win. Now that now that when you watch Olympic sports in the future, you can probably get an idea of what's going on.